Hey y'all, I'm Kim, host of Book Marketing Mania, and I'm so thrilled you're tuning in to learn how to build your audience and reach new readers on podcast. This week, we're continuing our series of podcast interviews with author spotlights on new friends that I've connected with through the PodMatch service that we talked about in episode 131. And I can't wait for you to hear today from author Danielle Bernock to share tips for you if you're considering publishing a memoir, as well as what's working for Danielle to market her books, including her experience with PodMatch as a podcast guest. You're in for a treat today, so let's get to it. Hey, Danielle, welcome to Book Marketing Mania. I'm so thrilled you're here to serve my listeners today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm very excited about this podcast. It's different than many I've been on.
Oh, good. Well, that's awesome. And y'all heard me share in the introduction that Danielle and I had connected through PodMatch, and I'm just so glad to make this connection that we might not have otherwise. So, Danielle, why don't you tell us? I know all of our audiences is writing and authors and podcasters that are usually podcasting because they are writing a book too, and they're building their audience. And so I would just love for you to share a little bit about your journey. Tell us about your memoir and who you wrote it for.
Well, my memoir is Emerging with Wings. Who I really wrote it for was whoever I could help from the beginning. From the beginning, it was, I want to help people. So I have been transformed, and so I want to share that with others. I was nowhere in the space back then that I am now. So I was ignorant of so many things. Didn't plan it out and plot it out like so many people do. I'm going to write a book. I sat down, started writing. I taught myself how to do that. Didn't know anything about it at all.
Wow.
So I was a real green newbie when I did that. And my book will be 10 years old this year. And since sharing that, I become a coach and a speaker, and I had a podcast. I had an online store for a while. I've done all different kinds of things because of how my story resonated with people. I was very timid about sharing it because there's a lot of real personal stuff in there. I went into counseling to write it because I'm a childhood trauma survivor. That's my story. There's a lot of parts to it. When I published the book, there was a lot of new things in it that were new to me that I learned while I was writing the book. So I love saying this because it's so humorous, but people who've written books, they really do understand. My greatest fear was that someone would actually read it.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. I bet that's so true.
It's like that whenever you put your art out there. If you paint or you draw or what, you want to share it and you want people to love it, but then you had this part of you that's like, oh my goodness, what if they hate it?
Yeah.
What if it's awful? What if, what if? But I committed to writing a book. So I got the end. You have to publish it. If it's not published, it's not a book. It's a manuscript. So I put it out there, and how it resonated with people is what's led me to what I do today. There's a quote in there that's gone viral, which still astounds me. 10 years later, I still find it on websites, and people write me and say, can I put this in my book, and other things like that. It just really is astounding.
What quote is that? So share it with us.
It begins with, trauma is personal. I need to read it because whenever I get on the spot, I go, which is, just like from your memory, trying to do your memory. It is, trauma is personal. It does not disappear if it is not validated. When it is ignored or invalidated, the silent screams continue, internally heard only by the one held captive. When someone enters the pain and hears the screams, healing can begin.
Oh, gosh, that's so powerful. I can see why that's still being shared around 10 years later. Yeah, so grateful for that. Memoirs are so personal that there's not always something like, especially about trauma, there's not always something that we can turn around and share like publicly like that. So I'm glad you did, because I do think anybody thinking about writing that, just kind of think about maybe how you can I guess, purposefully, think about that, baking that into your content, but yet you may not have, and you just never know what's going to resonate with your readers. I know as a reader, things resonate with me, and authors, they're like, wow, I didn't think that would have been that big of a deal. But I just imagine that's a little bit harder when you're writing a memoir. So tell us a little bit about that, Danielle. Just, you said you self-taught, I'm guessing, was that like totally self-taught, like truly like going and watching YouTube videos, scouring
Uh-huh.
the internet,
Uh-huh. Taking courses on LinkedIn through their platform called lynda.com. Yeah. I
Yeah,
didn't know what front
yeah,
matter was. I didn't know what back matter was. I
yeah.
didn't know what bleed was and the gutter and all those things. I had to learn all those things, and I taught them all myself because I purposefully self-published
Uh-huh.
because it's my story. And to try
Uh-huh.
and get a traditional publisher to publish it, I was going to have to give them the rights to my story.
Right.
And then they could
Yeah.
change my story. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, it's my story. You're not
Yeah.
changing my story. That was one thing I was very hardlined on.
Uh-huh.
But something that I think is really important for writers of memoirs to think about and to know. I've heard this since then. I think it was just a gift from God that I had this in me. When I did this, like I said, I kind of just started.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's really important to know and focus on that your memoir is not about you.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about you. It's not for you. And it can't be written for yourself. If
Uh-huh.
you want to write a book for yourself, write yourself a manuscript and then keep it. But if you're going to write a
Yeah.
memoir and you want to share it with people, it has to be for your reader. You have
Mm-hmm.
to be sharing it for the purpose of helping someone else, of feeding into them in some capacity. Because if it's all about telling every little detail of your life and everything
Mm-hmm.
about you, well, they're going
Yeah.
to pick that up when they're reading it. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. And maybe your friends or family might want to read it, but it's not going to go any further than that. I'm so glad you talked about that because that I know for a long time I really shied away from memoirs because that is what I seem to always come across, and it's
Hmm.
kind of like, oh, this is great. But, if you didn't know the person or yeah, if it's just you're just reading their story like on a blog or something, it's not really
Yeah.
why you buy a book. And so I'm glad to see that, so many other memoirs are coming out with that focus, like
Hmm.
truly think about what's in it for the reader. So tell us, Danielle, so writing about such a sensitive topic, what is the number one tip that comes to mind for somebody out there that's listening and going, I have a really hard story that I would love to share, but I don't even know where to start.
Oh, what would help someone? What about your life would help someone?
Mm-hmm.
Not sharing all the down, dirty awfulness, because I don't think people want to read that. I read
Mm-hmm.
someone's memoir and I wished I could unread parts of it.
Oh gosh, yeah.
It was graphic.
Uh-huh.
Mine has no graphicness in it. In my memoir, I speak to my
Uh-huh.
reader. I actually address them and talk to them in the book because I'm bringing them into my story. I wrote it like a love story. So I have a hero, a villain, and then the person overcoming. So
Oh yeah.
it's it's written like a love story, and that's what I call it. It's a different kind of love story because you emerge victorious. You emerge with
Uh-huh.
wings. The wings are about freedom.
Yeah. So let me ask you, Danielle, since you mentioned you self-published as well,
Mhm.
what is the number one tip you would share with somebody, whether they're writing memoirs or other narrative nonfiction? What is the number one tip you would share if they've decided they want to self-publish?
Educate yourself.
Hmm.
Educate yourself. And don't just land on the first self-publishing help person out there. The point is that there are many different influencers out there or people out there that will help, that will come
Uh-huh.
alongside and help you to do that. So find someone you want to either learn from or work with, or a
Hmm.
place where you can get the kind of information that will serve you, because every writer has their own style, the way that they learn. So
Hmm.
I don't want to plug any particular place. Educate yourself and find the right fit for you to be doing it most yourself. You can piecemeal parts out. You can go through a course. And there's so many ways to do it. Educate yourself.
Hmm.
I've spoken at a conference a couple of times specifically about writing. And one was about the courage and power and tools to write. And one of the things I put in there was you need to decide, do you want to self-publish or traditional publish? That's a choice you need to decide.
Right.
And I gave them information about that. And then another time I shared, it was how writing a book will change you. People talk about you write a book to transform other people, which is true. It does. I mean, if you write a good book, it does.
Yeah.
But something that I had never heard anyone speak on before is when you write a book, it changes you, the writer.
Yeah.
You are a different person at the end of writing that book, and to give yourself to that.
Yeah. That's so true. I mean, what I've heard, I have not written a book, so I can't vouch for that. But I know I've heard authors talk about that, like it's such a struggle as they're going through and studying and putting all their thoughts on paper and putting it into chapters, like all that work you're doing for your reader, but it's really working on your heart too, to share what you've been through in a way that does help somebody else.
That reminds me of something I just looked at the other day. I was doing some research and somehow I landed back into my early preparatory time of writing my first book. And I knew that I didn't have my title when I started. Some people, they have their title when they start. Some people don't. I mean, my book, Because You Matter, I had the title before I knew it was a book. So that's a completely different journey than my first book, Emerging with Wings. I kept a Word document of possible titles throughout the whole writing journey. I had 65 other possible titles.
Wow.
That I went through before I landed on that. But that became like a treasure map of in my journey. So I'm glad I kept that. The other day I read through all of those and I remembered my little journey, like little breadcrumbs, all those different little title possibilities.
Yeah. I was just thinking about what you were talking about earlier. I often hear authors talk about too, like once their book has been released or it's about to be released, they'll go through some struggle where they need the book again. Like it's like I really wrote the book for myself again because now God's taken me on this journey that I wasn't really expecting. I was expecting my readers to go on it, but I didn't realize maybe he's going to take me on it again, So yeah, it's just the written words and books are so powerful. So tell us, Danielle, you've written several books and you've been on this journey for quite a while. What is working right now for you to market your books?
Well, currently I'm part of a vendor program that's in 9 or more states. When I joined it, it was only in 5 states, and I helped the president get it into Michigan. Texas is one of the main places that it's at. It's called National Authors and Grocery Stores.
Oh, wow.
Program.
Okay.
And what it is, it's a vendor program. There's, an annual fee and a very small fee to get your ISBN loaded into the Kroger or other grocery stores, depending on where they are, in the country, to get it into their computer system.
Okay.
And I bring a table, a specified size table. I had a banner that I open up on my table, get your book, meet the author, get it signed today. And, you set up your little table, you schedule your times at the places where they let you go. And I love doing it. I really, really love doing it because it puts me in front of a completely different demographic.
Yeah.
And there's a learning curve of, where is a better place depending on what genre of book you have. Because I do self-help and memoir, they're nonfiction. That's a different demographic than someone who reads murder mysteries or someone who likes sci-fi or children's books and stuff. So Ray, the president, he talks about, how to do the studies of the demographics of which grocery store would be good. Is it, by all the schools? Is it by all the businesses? And things like that. So if you don't do your legwork, you might not get, the better results. But they come in there, I talk with them. And if they want my book, I give them an ISBN, a UPC. They pay for it at the register.
That's so
and they
cool.
come back and they get the book. I sign it for them. And then I get paid from the vendor program, a portion of the proceeds.
Oh, okay. That's awesome. Yeah, I have to get a link from you for that because I've heard of authors being in grocery stores, but I didn't hear of it being like a certain program that they might be a part of. That's super cool. Yeah, I would love to run into authors at the grocery stores, because I often like check out the aisle, but it's usually like gift books and maybe they'll have a couple of things, lots more fiction than nonfiction that I'm looking for. So that's super cool. Tell us about, because I know obviously since you pitched me through Podmatch where we connected, and I know you have been on several of my friends' podcasts. A shout out to, Doris Swift. I know you were on hers, and Angie Bauman. And I would love to hear what your experience has been with Podmatch to, I don't know if you used it when you were hosting a podcast, but obviously you're using it as a podcast guest to connect and reach new listeners that you might not be otherwise. So tell us about that experience.
I think Alex is phenomenal, and I tell him that all the time whenever he posts stuff on LinkedIn. I joined Podmatch in its beta phase. I've been with Podmatch for a long time.
Yeah.
And I think it's a phenomenal platform. I'm so proud of Alex, all that he has done with this. I've watched him grow it. Like I said, from the
Yeah.
beginning. And yes, I did have my own podcast on there for a while. I ran it for 3 seasons.
Uh-huh.
And I loved hosting
Uh-huh.
podcast as well, but I felt led to bring it to a close, which made me sad,
Yeah.
but made me happy because when you're doing what you know you need to be doing, it feels good. So,
Yes. Oh my
but yeah,
gosh. Yes.
I have enjoyed it. So I tell people about it. I think it's a great platform, and I looked into other ones that they had before that,
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah.
I think Alex's is the best.
Yeah, I think it's just so easy. And I know that I've had people pop up as matches that I had them back in my mind. Like I should reach out to them sometime and see about them guesting on my show. But it's like, as you know, from being a podcast host, I mean, that takes effort, and it's kind of like you might put it on your list, but not get around to it. But it's just so easy when the person pops up as a possible match, and then you can just click a button and get it taken care of. And that's worked out so well for me. And I know you've been on quite a few through Podmatch. So
Mhm.
I'm sure just being able to make that instant connection and then serve new audiences that may not have ever heard of Danielle and get
Yeah.
introduced to them is
Yeah,
amazing.
meeting people all over the world. I
Hmm.
interviewed people in New Zealand and Australia and the UK, and I mean all over the place. What's the other one? Singapore. I mean,
Oh,
it's just
yeah.
yeah, and it's just fascinating the people that you meet by doing a podcast. I really
Yeah.
I love doing my interviews, meeting the people.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. And I think that's that hidden gem that not everybody realizes. You think about, okay, I'm gonna have a guest on, they're going to serve my audience, and then I'm on to the next guest, or, they're just sharing about their book, but there's no like connection. But I really think yeah, between the host and the guest, like you just never know who you're going to meet and where that relationship's going to go. And I think we sometimes forget to just realize that, yeah, there's two people connecting, even though you are
Mhm.
serving listeners, there are two people connecting at that time. And yeah, it's just, yeah, like you said, it's so fun to meet people around the world. And yeah, just all these people that God puts in our path that we would never have interacted with any other way if not for
Yeah.
Podmatch. So yeah, I'm so thankful I got to meet Alex in person at a conference last fall,
Oh,
and he and
cool.
his
I haven't met
wife
him
are
in
both,
person.
oh
Oh,
god,
that'd be
and
cool.
he's the exact same person in
Yeah.
person as he is online, and his wife Alicia. And yeah, I love everything they're doing and just their
Mhm.
hearts to serve.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it
Yeah.
was a podcasting conference, and he was talking about his session was on like your podcast art and getting visible. And I was like, you didn't even mention Podmatch. Like I wanted to be up, your cheerleader for Podmatch. And he was like, well, I'm just here to serve. Like, he was like
Yeah.
not self-promotional. And I
Oh,
just so
yeah.
admire that about him. But yeah, I love everything he's doing. And he's such a kind soul. So yeah, well, that's so awesome. Well, Danielle, this has been so incredible. So tell our listeners where they could connect with you and find out more about all the different offerings you have in addition to being an author.
Well, my website, you can get to everything I do on my website.
Okay.
It's daniellebernock.com. It's
Okay.
DanielleBernock.com. You can
Awesome.
find my books, my coaching, my speaking, my socials. I've since the end of February, I've become very active on LinkedIn. I've
Oh,
kind
good.
of switched my activity from Instagram over to LinkedIn, and
Yeah.
I am meeting just some of the most phenomenal people there
Oh,
too. I
yay.
am loving it there.
Well, we'll have to connect there. Yeah. My husband, I mean, I was in the corporate world a long time ago. And so I never got onto LinkedIn, right? From that get go. But my husband's always been on it. He's always been like, you need to be on LinkedIn, like just to connect with people. And I've always fought it, but now it's like kind of gotten this new wave, I think, about it. So it's not just that
Yeah.
stuffy
Yeah, I
corporate people looking for a
read a book,
job.
and which led me to go to LinkedIn. So I went and
Yeah.
checked it out, and I didn't see it as a social media. What
Uh huh.
my
Yeah.
perception was, it's where you go to look for a job.
Right.
It's where I
Yeah.
found lynda.com to do all those courses before.
Uh huh.
And I'm like, there's people there and they're talking to each other. And it's like,
Yes.
wow, this is the best social media.
It is. Yeah, none of the nonsense, although I'm sure people still try to put nonsense on there, but that's not typically what you see. And yeah, it's just such genuine way to connect with people. Like
Hmm.
I love connecting people that I know. And I think that's just a natural thing on LinkedIn,
Yeah,
that
there
people
are
are
the pictures
automatically
out there
think of
though.
who. Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
There are the pictures out there that, oh, buy my stuff, buy my stuff, buy my stuff. And it's
Yeah.
like, oh no,
Yeah.
I'm there to
Yeah.
connect. And it's like people want
Yeah.
to work with people they trust. And
Yes,
so I'm there to
absolutely.
establish relationships. I'm going to be a part of a networking academy coming up, and how to just build those relationships, because that's where we build trust, and you want to work with people you trust.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. Yeah.
And
Keep us posted on
references,
that. That sounds so
you
cool.
get a
Yeah.
personal reference. The word of mouth is the most powerful.
Yeah. That's so true. Yeah. Especially as an author, just being able to, to vouch for you, whether you've written your book yet or not, just to be able to say, I know that person, even if it's just online, like I know them, I trust them. I see the stuff they put out and what they talk about, and I'm here for it. So yeah, that's so fun. Well, I'll definitely connect with you on LinkedIn, Danielle, and I'll definitely put your link in the show notes so everybody can connect with you on your website. And thank you again for your time today. It means so much to me to be here to serve my listeners well.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Oh, y'all, I absolutely love connecting with new friends and getting to serve you at the same time. Stay tuned next week for another author spotlight on my new Podmatch friend, author Kim Sorrell, who's going to share tips with you if you are hesitant to write about your hard story, as well as what's working well for Kim to market her book, including her experience with Podmatch as a podcast guest. I can't wait for you to meet Kim. Thanks for tuning in today, and as always, I'll be there for you to help you build your audience and reach new readers one podcast at a time. See you then.